7 minutes. It took Chinese authorities just 7 minutes to find reporter John Sudworth in a city of 4.3 million people. This stunt was meant to demonstrate China's mass surveillance state that collects people's data and their internet usage and feeds it back into a surveillance system that allows them to monitor and control the 1.4 billion people, as explained in an article by the Business Insider. But we in America have ingrained in our Constitution that human right of privacy, and our founders ensured that our government would be checked by the people. However, if you used the internet, your phone, your laptop, a text message, and email from the years 2001 to 2013, it is likely that the United States federal government has a record of it. Oftentimes, those ideals that we attempt to reflect brightly on other nations don't seem to shine very favorably back on us. And in those years following the horrific tragedies of September 11th, 2001, the United States federal government installed a surveillance program and then installed another program that made it immovable. And that's why today my purpose is to inform you regarding mass American surveillance. First, looking at why we should care, then the extent of the surveillance, and then finally the troubling system that keeps it in place. Now, I digress. This is a relatively dark topic, but that's what makes it so important, because it deals with the possible violation of one of our most important rights, the right of privacy. Our founders encoded that right in the Fourth Amendment, saying, quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated." And in part, one of the reasons why our founders put that in there is because prior to America ever even existing, British authorities felt free to enter people's homes and rummage through their possessions simply on the hunch that they could be a threat. If you were a suspected revolutionary, your life could be turned upside down. But picture with me for a second if the British authorities had a surveillance system that monitored the location and the political affiliation of their citizens. I think the American Revolution would have ended far before it began. Imagine if Hitler, under the German Empire, had a surveillance system that monitored the location and the ethnicity of his people. Many more would have died in the Holocaust. Privacy is a necessary barrier right between a government that by nature wants to increase in power and intelligence. You may not have an opinion the government doesn't like now, but you might in the future. And that's why you should care. But why do I care? Why do I write this speech? It's because when I look around this world, I see a world that maybe doesn't care so much about its rights anymore, values that we have lost. To me, the speech isn't really about privacy as much as it is about the need to grow up leaders in this generation, to fight against policies and acts like this, to fuel the idea that our rights are important and that we should value them. And that's why I care. And by extension, why all of you should care. Now, this situation of mass surveillance culminated after those horrific tragedies in which it was seen that there was an intelligence error. I mean, how did the Department of Justice, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, how did they all miss that attack? Regardless of why they missed the attack, they sort of decided that that solution would be increased surveillance. In the 2001 Patriot Act, a portion of the act granted the government greater ability to collect data from third-party companies, like internet companies and telephone companies. And the FISA Amendments Act of the same year granted those companies immunity from the law for cooperating with the government. Now that set up the ability of a surveillance state, but the extent of it was unknown until multiple whistleblowers and leakers came out over the course of the next 12 years. From 2006, in which lawyer Thomas Tam revealed a program codenamed Stellar Wind, an NSA program that monitored email communications, telephone conversations, financial transactions, activity reports, and suspicious activity reports of American citizens without a warrant. To 2008, according to a Wired article, in which multiple secret rooms and backdoor systems were found in various companies, like AT&T and Verizon, that the government had installed in the companies to mine and collect data from the companies without a warrant. to 2013 with the most famous case of Edward Snowden, a former CIA and NSA analyst who monitored and released some 20,000 documents related to various surveillance programs. According to a Guardian article, the surveillance that Snowden revealed monitored, quote, cell phones, laptops, Skype, and chat rooms. It allowed the NSA to build what it called a pattern of your life, a detailed profile of a target and anyone associated with them, end quote. What these documents revealed is that the NSA allowed themselves to monitor people 3 hops away from a potential target. So the friends of the target, the friends of the friends of the target, and the friends of the friends of the friends of the target. So what that means is that if you were a target and you had, say, 100 friends, according to analytics by Facebook, the amount of hops that the NSA was allowed to make would monitor the population of Nevada, 2.7 million people, to just monitor one person. The NSA had somewhere around 27 surveillance programs in millions of people in multiple countries, and all of that without a warrant. And although there have been no leaks in the last couple of years, the government denied the programs existed. Nobody went to jail. Companies got off scot-free, and every court case risen against the companies or the government was shot down for, quote, national security concerns. So I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not those programs still exist. But to me, it's not as troubling as a system that allowed them to exist in the first place. On March 12th, 2013, 2 months before Snowden came forth with the information, then director of the NSA, James Clapper, was asked under oath in a public Senate hearing, quote, does the NSA collect any type of data on Americans? His answer, no, sir. But following Snowden's release of the information, he corrected that in an interview with ABC, saying, I responded in what I thought was the most truthful or least untruthful manner, end quote. What that demonstrates is the horrible severing of the separations of powers. The executive branch led the intelligence community, but was unchecked by the other branches. And the reason for that was very eloquently put by Snowden himself in an interview with Joe Rogan, saying, quote, this leads to a fundamentally broken system. The only way for the courts to review the legality of the programs is to establish the programs exist. But you can't establish they exist unless you provide evidence. But providing evidence to courts, to journalists, to anyone is a felony, punishable by 10 years per count, end quote. That's why Snowden is hiding away in Russia, because it's literally illegal to check these programs. But the government claims even if they did exist, they would be legal. And that's due to Supreme Court precedent in cases like Smith v. Maryland, in which an idea was set that data collected by third-party companies doesn't belong to you. I mean, it's the property of the company and not of you. But that was in 1967. And what is data now? Everything collected by your phone, your laptops, your smart TV, your smart car, internet, the photos on Facebook and Instagram. The entire amalgamation of our life story and actions is data. And the government feels free to collect it in the interest of national security. Now, I recognize that this issue is far more complex than I can unravel in just 10 minutes. And obviously the government wanted to protect its people from terrorism. But what we need to understand is that these programs likely existed and harmed the balances of powers that our founders sought to create. When we criticize China for its surveillance state, we don't realize that a mirror doesn't reflect very well on us. We are not China. Our founders built us on firmer ground, but currently they are rolling in their graves. And today, I hope I have given you a better understanding of this troubling topic by looking at why we should care, what the surveillance it pertains to, and the system that keeps it in place. I think many of us, including myself, grow concerned when we look around America, the world that our children will be tasked to fix. And sadly, this is just another piece to the proverbial puzzle that we've put ourselves in. But that's the point. Use this speech and speeches like it as an incentive to grow the mission I'm sure many of us have already tasked ourselves with, to grow up leaders out of this generation, to fight policies and actions like mass surveillance. Hey, and maybe someday soon we can actually live out those golden words, the right of the people, to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and